Hey everybody, Dan here from Ultimate Boston Red Sox Collector page on Facebook and YouTube videos. I'm making another video today. I'm actually going to make two videos because I'm afraid I'm going to get cut off and it's not going to let me upload them later. So I'm going to make two medium-sized videos today. First video, I'm just going to highlight my one item that came in the mail today, and I'm going to talk about my I'm going to talk about my past collecting history and how I got involved in the hobby. And then in my second video, if enough people are still interested and not asleep yet, I'm going to move on to my current collecting and some ideas that have been kind of floating in my head and maybe some future collecting endeavors. So we're going to start off with showing off my one card from my mail day today. It is a 2012 Topps Triple Threads Adrian Gonzalez. It's a five-piece relic. It says Gonzo, his nickname. Numbered 17 out of 27. Limited print run. Missed out on a couple other ones from the same seller. As you know, I like to combine shipping, and I missed out, so I ended up paying about $6 for that one. Little more than I'd like to spend on an Adrian Gonzalez relic, but it is a five-piece and number to 27, so it's a low print run anyway. So that was today's mail. So what I want to talk about a little bit is my history in collecting, and it dates back. I'm going to be 46 in 24 days. And my collecting history goes back to when I was 6 years old. We used to live up the road from a little corner store, and they sold baseball cards and stickers and, food, candy, grocery items. And my mom used to send me down there every once in a while to pick a few things up. And she'd give me an extra quarter or 50 cents and say, buy yourself, whatever you want, whether it was ice cream, candy. For me, it was baseball cards. At 6 years old, I was buying baseball cards. Started buying packs, 1, 2 packs at a time. I followed baseball, but as a 6-year-old, I don't know how much I actually knew about baseball and the players of the day. I just liked the looks of the cards. I remember looking at cards and saying, "Oh, that's a cool picture." And I remember if I was lucky enough to get a checklist in a pack of those cards, I would mark off the checklist with whatever I had. It was more about getting as many different cards as I can or could, and trying to build sets. And that's why I later in life became a set builder and changed the whole focus of my collection completely back in the late 90s. And some of you will be surprised to hear what I collected, considering this magnitude of Red Sox collectibles that I have now and the fact that I've always been a diehard Red Sox fan. So as the 80s went on, I continued to buy cards wherever I could, through allowance or doing chores around the house, or just the occasional run to the corner store. My older brother collected cards, had quite a card collection as well. He used to have people over to the house to trade. He used to go to the shows, and he once in a while would give me some of his duplicates. And then as I got a little bit older, I remember my parents owned a little corner store in the opposite direction from where we lived, right up the road though. And one day my dad called me, and I believe this was in 1985 when I was 11. And he called and he said, "Can you come to the store?" And I ran up there, and I remember he asked me to do something, whatever a 10 or 11-year-old kid could do to help out. And then he gave me about half of the box of 84 Fleer cards that he had on the shelf with the candy. He didn't sell a lot of baseball cards in that store. It was right across the street from our church, and it was mostly knickknacks and religious items and things like that. And he sold candy and gum and to have it, but it wasn't a big seller. So he gave me about probably 10 to 15 packs of cards. And I remember I was so excited. I brought them home and ripped them open, and I remember putting them in order and marking whatever checklist cards I had, and building sets. And that was the fun for me, was getting as many different cards as I could. I didn't really care up until like the later 80s about rookie cards and trying to pull the big names. And that started probably in like 86, 87 range, when I was a little bit older and watching more baseball and following it and reading magazines. And everybody in 87 wanted Mark McGwire cards, and 86 wanted Jose Canseco and Bo Jackson. And 1987 and 88, it was all about Greg Jeffries. Those of us who collected for a long time, remember that name, Greg Jeffries. 88 Donruss and Fleer cards were going for like $8 a card, which was big money back then for a rookie card of a guy who'd never played a game, and people were buying them. And I remember selling at I remember doing a yard sale at my house, and I put out a bunch of my cards for sale, and I was selling Greg Jeffries cards for $5, $6, $7 a card. And I remember just I look at that now and I laugh because I'm like, geez, I made out like a bandit on those cards. Those aren't worth a nickel now. So we all remember the rookie card craze, and of course in '89 it was Griffey Jr. It was Upper Deck. It was all about Upper Deck and Griffey Jr. And I remember I bought 2 wax boxes of '89 Upper Deck, and I did not pull a Griffey. And I hear all these stories now about how they like quadruple printed that card and had sheets of just Griffey that they printed. And I wasn't even fortunate enough to get one in the packs in the 2 boxes that I bought. I had to eventually buy one and to put my set together. And collecting is so much different now than it was back then. For me back then, even though I was it was a hobby. It was also okay. How many expensive cards can I get? I used to go to shows with my dad. I would buy vintage cards. I would go to the best vintage dealer at the show, and I would look at his cards, and I would talk him down on cards at 13, 14 years old. I was doing shows when I was 14, 15. I did a couple of the local shows. I had my dad had let me buy a countertop showcase, and I just put my cards loose, and I was selling sets, and I would bring stuff and trade and buy other cards from other collectors, and it was fun. I loved it, and that was back when you had shows every weekend almost in different parts of the state. And my dad used to take me to the Augusta and Portland shows, got to meet some cool autograph guests. I remember one of my fondest memories was meeting Enos Slaughter at a card show in Portland, and I had bought one ticket, and I had a baseball for him to sign, and he signed my baseball. And my dad, who was always out looking for a good deal or looking for the best deal, kind of asked him politely. I was wearing a St. Louis Cardinals jersey, and he asked him, he said, would you mind signing his shirt? And Mr. Slaughter was gracious enough to say, sure, I'll sign it. And I remember the promoter was saying no, 1 autograph per ticket. And Mr. Slaughter jumped right in and said, no, I'll sign it. Here I am, this 12, 13-year-old kid. And I was really skinny back then. I was really shy and really skinny. And I remember I turned to him and he signed the shirt somewhere in this area. And he looked at my dad and he said, good God. He says, what are you feeding this kid? I was skin and bones, and I just couldn't gain weight back then. I was very high metabolism, and I was active, and I didn't eat a ton, but I mean, I wasn't malnourished by no means. It just took forever for me to gain weight. So that was a very fond memory I have from a card show as a kid. I know I met some other players at one point too, but it was about the cards, and I used to buy a lot of vintage cards at shows. I try to fill my sets. There was a great baseball card store in North Conway, New Hampshire. I think it was called Cracker Jack Baseball Cards, and this guy's shop, it wasn't big at all. It was right on the main drag in North Conway. It was the coolest place to go. That was like my go-to place. My dad would take us there. Every few years we would go there. We would go there like on the 4th of July. That was like, I didn't care about going to the beach or going anywhere else. I wanted to go to the card store in New Hampshire, and that was like a treat. And I remember there was another card store that opened up that was on the road on the way up there that we stopped in on the way back. And God bless my mom. My mom would sit in the car for like 2 hours while we went in the shop, and it would take a long time. This guy had vintage, the coolest. I mean, he had so much vintage stuff, unopened stuff. He had, and then he had singles like you wouldn't believe. You could go there with your checklist and leave there with your set completed most of the time. He had multiples of every card. I mean, this was like it was like a fantasy land for me as a kid. And sadly, he closed up. Probably in the mid 90s. I remember taking a drive down there when I was older and got my license, and I said, I want to take a ride down there. And I drove all the way down there, and it had been converted into a restaurant. They were closed up, and I was so disappointed. I was like, I drove all the way down here. It was about an hour and a half from home. Not a terribly long drive, but it was just the disappointment, the excitement that I felt as I was driving down there, and then I get all the way there, and it's gone. And it's like, oh, no. But we had some local card stores too. Some of them were better than others, but always met a lot of nice people through there. And again, built my collection to the point when I graduated high school, I probably had about 130,000 cards. And I had everything from tobacco cards all the way up to the current year's cards of like 1992. And then after high school, like a lot of people, I stopped collecting for a while. I'd buy a few packs here and there. I'd buy a box of cards. I'd put a set together but never finished them. And I just put stuff in boxes and never really looked at it again for a few years. Between like 93 and 96, 97, I bought a few packs of cards here and there, and I would just put them in my put them in the boxes with everything else. And then I started getting back into collecting a little bit in the late 90s. Discovered Sport Lots, took out my want list, started making lists again of stuff I needed, and tried to complete a lot of these sets that I never got around to finishing. And I had taken my commons and decided I had so many duplicates, I started building more sets that I already had complete sets of, and then tried to finish those. So I had multiple sets, and I had close to 100 complete sets at one point, like major issue complete sets, probably about 70. And then I had like Topps traded sets and box sets and things like that. And so I had a nice collection of cards, and then when I kind of stopped after a while, I got back into it again and decided, oh, I want to collect certain players. And I started selling some of my stuff on eBay. I remember 1998, I bought a pack of Upper Deck, I believe it was SPX, and I got a hot pack, and I got a Travis Lee Game Used back card. And that was like one of the first Game Used back cards out there, Game Used cards in a major set. And I remember getting the Travis Lee card, and I flipped that card on eBay for like $80. I mean, you couldn't get 80 cents for that thing now. And I remember I got a couple of the McGuire specialty cards and sold those for like 20, 25 bucks a piece. And so that was really cool. I was able to get a lot of money for cards. I had 2 Jeter SPs that I had pulled from packs in 93. I had bought quite a few packs of 93 SP. I had 2 Jeters. I think I sold those for probably between 60 and 80 bucks a card. Don't remember what kind of condition they were in, to be honest with you. I don't know if they were 9s or 10s, if they were graded today. I have no idea. I don't have any regrets. I got good money for them back then. I sold all my rookie cards, then I started selling my sets. And this was back when you could sell an 83 Topps set that was in a binder in really good condition. You could get like $100 for it, $100, $110. I sold my 85 Topps set during the whole McGuire phase, and I got like $200 for it. I mean, you can get 25, 30 bucks for it now. So I sold my stuff at the right time. Then I started collecting Hall of Fame players and current star players, guys like Boggs, Clemens, Dave Winfield. I collected Pete Rose, Steve Carlton, Nolan Ryan, Robin Yount, George Brett. I remember I was collecting like 10 or 12 different guys, and then one day I'm like, okay, enough of this. I gotta streamline. So I decided to pick one player out of that bunch, and there was a lot of Hall of Famers in that bunch, and a lot of great players who had good careers, and that's why I chose those guys, because I knew, look, no matter what happens now, those guys had great careers, and their cards are going to hold their value. So I decided to go with one guy. And if you're that interested in finding out who I focus my entire collection on at that point, then stay tuned for my second video, because I'm running up near 13 minutes on this one, so I'm going to stop it now. Thanks everybody for watching, and if you're interested in hearing more about my history of collecting and my current and future goals, tune into my next video. For now, talk to you later.